Welcome to our Speak Smart English YouTube channel. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into the mind of Leonardo da Vinci. You probably know him for the Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
But we're going way beyond that.
Huh?
We're going to be exploring the man behind the masterpieces.
Awesome.
So to start us off, what can you tell us about Da Vinci's early life and his path to becoming an artist?
Yeah, well, Da Vinci's path wasn't exactly what you would call typical. He was born in 1452 near Florence,
Okay.
and his illegitimacy really shaped his journey.
So that means he couldn't, for example, pursue a traditional career path like law,
Exactly.
which ultimately led him to art.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
So instead of going into law, he ended up in the workshop of the artist Verrocchio.
Oh, interesting. So he essentially became Verrocchio's apprentice.
Yes, exactly.
What was the art scene like in Florence back then?
Oh, Florence was like the place to be if you were an artist. It was the heart of the Renaissance, a time of incredible artistic innovation.
Wow.
Like everything was just being rediscovered and reinvented.
So it sounds like he was really in the right place at the right time to kind of soak it all up.
Totally.
I've heard this story about Verrocchio being so blown away by Da Vinci's talent that he basically gave up painting himself.
Yeah, I've heard that one too.
It's about the painting Baptism of Christ, right?
That's the one.
Where Da Vinci supposedly painted one of the angels so well that Verrocchio's like, I'm done. I can't compete with this.
It's probably just a legend, but
Right.
it really shows you how talented Da Vinci was, even as a young apprentice.
I mean, to make your master feel like that,
Right.
pretty impressive. But then there's this other side to him where he'd start all these projects and not always finish them.
Yeah, that's true.
It's almost like he had too many ideas and couldn't stick with just one.
I think that's a good way to put it.
Like his mind was just racing all the time.
His curiosity was insatiable. He wasn't just interested in painting. He was into sculpture, engineering, anatomy, like everything.
It's like he was trying to figure out how the entire universe worked.
Yeah, and that's where his notebooks come in.
Right, those famous notebooks. They're filled with all sorts of observations and sketches on anything and everything.
Exactly. You can find notes on the shapes of clouds, the mechanics of bird flight, human anatomy, like you name it, it's in there.
It's amazing to think he was doing all this without the internet or any of the resources we have today.
It really is. He was basically building his own encyclopedia of knowledge.
So how did he begin to approach such a vast range of subjects?
He used something that we now play first principles thinking.
What's that?
It's about breaking down complex things to their most basic truths and then building your understanding from there.
So like figuring out the fundamental principles behind everything he observed.
Exactly. No Google, no Wikipedia back then.
He had to figure it all out himself.
He did. Yeah.
Incredible. And speaking of figuring things out, let's talk about how he presented himself when he was looking for work. He reached out to the Duke of Milan in 1481, but he kind of downplayed his artistic skills, which seems kind of strange, don't you think?
It does seem a little counterintuitive, especially for someone who was already making a name for himself as an artist.
So what was he emphasizing instead?
Well, he really played up his engineering skills. He basically presented himself as a military engineer, someone who could design bridges and weapons and all sorts of war machines.
Why do you think he chose that approach?
I think he was being strategic.
Yeah.
The Duke of Milan at that time was probably more interested in practical solutions than artistic masterpieces.
It makes sense. I mean, a duke needs bridges and weapons to run his duchy.
Right.
But still, it's surprising that Da Vinci would focus on those aspects instead of his painting.
Well, it worked. He ended up spending 17 years in Milan creating some of his most iconic works, including The Last Supper.
Oh, wow. So even a genius like Da Vinci had to tailor his message to his audience.
Absolutely.
But even with his focus on engineering, he never lost his fascination with the human form.
Yeah, that's one of the things that makes him so interesting.
He was obsessed with understanding how the human body worked, both from an artistic and a scientific perspective.
Totally. And he took it way beyond just observing. He actually dissected human bodies to study their inner workings.
Wow, he was like a Renaissance-era anatomist.
He was.
So what kind of insights did he gain from these dissections?
Oh, he made some groundbreaking discoveries.
Really?
He was the first to understand that the human spine is curved, not straight. And he made incredibly detailed drawings of muscles, organs, even the circulatory system.
And these drawings weren't just scientific documents. They were works of art in their own right.
Exactly. The level of detail and precision is just incredible. They're still studied by medical students today.
That's amazing. So he was centuries ahead of his time in terms of anatomical knowledge.
He was. And it's important to remember that all of this, the art, the engineering, the anatomy, it was all connected for Da Vinci.
How so?
He saw the human body as a machine, a perfectly designed and incredibly complex machine.
So his anatomical studies weren't separate from his engineering work? They informed each other?
Exactly. And it wasn't just about the human body. He was fascinated by the mechanics of flight, too.
Like how birds fly.
Yeah. He spent hours observing birds, trying to figure out how they could soar through the air.
I guess that makes sense, given his interest in designing flying machines.
Right. He wasn't just being poetic about birds, he was studying them, trying to unlock the secrets of flight.
And did he manage to crack those secrets?
Well, his designs for helicopters and airplanes might not look much like the ones we have today.
Right.
But they show that he understood the basic principles of aerodynamics.
So he was on the right track even if his technology wasn't quite there
He
yet.
was definitely ahead of his time.
Now we can't talk about Da Vinci without mentioning the Mona Lisa.
Of course not. It's one of the most famous paintings in the world.
But it's also shrouded in mystery.
It is. There are so many questions surrounding it.
Like, who is this woman with the enigmatic smile?
Right. The most common theory is that it's Lisa Gherardini, the wife of a silk merchant.
Mhm.
But there's been speculation that it could be someone else entirely, maybe even a self-portrait in disguise.
Or maybe it's just a representation of an ideal woman, not a specific person at all.
That's possible, too.
And then there's the fact that Da Vinci kept this painting with him until he died.
Yeah, that's pretty unusual for commissioned work.
It makes you wonder if it held some special meaning for him.
It does. Maybe he just loved it too much to part with it.
Or maybe there's a hidden message in the painting that we haven't figured out yet.
Who knows? That's part of what makes it so fascinating.
And we've only just scratched the surface of Da Vinci's life and work.
There's so much more to explore.
It's clear that he was much more than just a painter.
He was a true Renaissance man, a genius who pushed the boundaries of art, science, and engineering.
And whose insatiable curiosity continues to inspire us centuries later.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really does make you think about how much more there is to discover about him.
And about how society viewed certain things back then.
Exactly.
We've been talking about all these amazing accomplishments.
Right.
But he was also considered an outsider in many ways.
Yeah, definitely.
Not just because of his, his illegitimacy,
Yeah.
but also because of other aspects of his life.
Right.
The sources we've looked at kind of hint at a more complex picture.
Yeah, they do.
It seems like he might have been gay.
There's definitely evidence to suggest that.
Yeah.
I mean, there are passages in his notebooks and biographies that allude to it.
Hmm.
And he was even arrested in Florence at one point for sodomy,
Oh, wow.
which was a very serious offense back then.
Yeah, that's a stark reminder of how different things were back then.
It really is.
And how dangerous it could be to be different.
Absolutely.
So he never married,
No, he didn't.
and there are indications that he had a long-term relationship with his purple Soleil.
It seems that way.
So even during the Renaissance, a time of supposed enlightenment, there were still these very strict social norms that people had to conform to.
Definitely. And it makes you wonder how much his personal life might have influenced his art.
That's a good point. We often separate the artist from the art,
Right.
but in reality, they're inseparable.
They are.
And then there's another interesting detail about Da Vinci that adds to this whole outsider thing.
Oh, yeah.
He was a vegetarian,
He was.
which was pretty uncommon for the 15th century.
Yeah, most people ate meat.
So it seems like almost every aspect of his life challenged conventions in some way.
In some way, yeah.
His vegetarianism makes me think about his love for animals,
Mm-hmm.
which we haven't really talked about yet.
No, we haven't.
I mean, we've discussed his anatomical drawings.
Right.
But there's also this story that he would buy caged birds just to set them free.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that story too.
It's such a beautiful image.
It is.
It shows a real empathy for animals.
And it kind of goes against the prevailing attitudes of the time.
Definitely. Back then, animals were mostly seen as, tools or resources.
Yeah,
But Da Vinci clearly saw them as more than that.
I think so.
And it's interesting how this love for animals connects to his scientific work.
How so?
Well, we talked about his fascination with the mechanics of flight
Right.
and how he spent hours observing birds.
Yeah.
But he wasn't just doing that because he thought birds were pretty.
No.
He was trying to understand how they worked, how they could fly.
He was trying to apply those principles to his own inventions.
Exactly. It's similar to his approach to anatomy.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't dissecting bodies just for the sake of it.
No.
He was driven by a desire to understand how this incredible machine, the human body, actually functioned.
And he made some amazing discoveries along the way.
He did. The curved spine, the workings of the heart, the flow of blood through the circulatory system, things that wouldn't be fully understood for centuries.
Incredible, right?
It's mind-blowing. And to think his notes on anatomy weren't even published during his lifetime.
Can you imagine the impact if they had been?
I know. It makes you wonder how many other brilliant ideas are hidden away in history, just waiting to be rediscovered.
So many lost treasures.
It's a reminder that progress isn't always linear.
Sometimes it takes a while for the world to catch up.
Exactly. But going back to Da Vinci's love for animals,
Yeah.
do you think that influenced his perspective on the relationship between the natural world and the mechanical world?
I think it definitely played a role.
How so?
Well, He saw beauty and complexity in both living creatures and machines. He didn't see them as separate or opposed,
Right.
but as part of a larger interconnected system.
So for him, there wasn't this hard line between nature and technology.
No, not really.
They were both expressions of the same underlying principle.
Exactly, and you can see that in his designs for flying machines.
Okay, how so?
He wasn't just trying to imitate birds.
No.
He was trying to understand the forces that allowed them to fly.
And then recreate those forces in a different form.
Exactly. He was trying to bridge the gap between the natural and the mechanical.
And that's really at the heart of what makes Da Vinci so fascinating.
It is.
This insatiable curiosity, this desire to understand how everything works, both in nature and in the human-made world.
Yeah, and to connect the two.
Exactly. Now, we've talked about the Mona Lisa a bit, but I'd love to hear more about your thoughts on this iconic painting.
Oh, yeah, the Mona Lisa, it's such a captivating piece.
It's become this symbol of mystery and allure.
It has.
What do you think Da Vinci was trying to convey with this painting?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
I don't think there's any one definitive answer.
Right.
Part of the Mona Lisa's power is its ambiguity. It invites us to come up with our own interpretations.
Like some people see serenity in her smile, others see mischief.
Yeah.
It's almost like she's holding on to a secret.
And we're trying to figure it out.
Exactly.
But then there's also the technical mastery of the painting.
Right, like the fumetto technique.
Yeah, the way he blended light and shadow to create the sense of depth and realism.
It's incredible.
It was revolutionary for its time, and it's still captivating viewers centuries later.
Sfumato basically means smoky in Italian, right?
Right.
It refers to those soft, hazy transitions between colors and tones.
Yeah, it gives the painting that almost ethereal quality.
Like she's almost glowing from within.
Yeah, exactly. And her gaze, it's like no matter where you stand in the room,
her eyes are following you.
It's a little unnerving, but also mesmerizing.
Definitely. It's like she's almost alive.
Stepping out of the canvas.
But how did Da Vinci achieve that effect?
Well, it's a combination of things.
Like what?
His deep understanding of perspective and anatomy. He knew exactly how to create the illusion of life and presence.
So it's not just about the technical skill.
No.
There's something about her expression that draws us in.
It's like she's inviting us into a silent conversation.
A wordless exchange of thoughts and emotions.
Yeah, and that brings us back to the mystery of her identity.
Right. Is it really Lisa Gherardini?
Is there a hidden message in her features?
The speculation is endless.
It is, and I think that's part of what makes the Mona Lisa so enduring. It sparks our curiosity, challenges us to look closer, to keep asking questions.
It's a work of art that continues to evolve with each new generation of viewers.
I think that's a great way to put it.
And I think that's true of Da Vinci's legacy as a whole.
Yeah.
He's left us with so much to think about, to learn from, to be inspired by.
Absolutely. His story is about the power of curiosity, the importance of thinking across disciplines.
And the courage to challenge conventional wisdom.
Exactly. Like he's saying, look at all these incredible things I've figured out, but there's so much more out there. Go explore and make your own discoveries.
What a fantastic challenge to leave us with. Yeah, it's really inspiring to think about what one person can achieve when they kind of break free from those limitations.
Absolutely. And you know what's even crazier?
What's that?
Da Vinci did all of this at a time when knowledge wasn't as readily available as it is today.
That's true. I mean, no internet, no smartphones.
Right, exactly. He had to really work for every bit of knowledge he gained.
It's you appreciate even more.
It really does. So what resonates most with you about his story?
I think for me, it's that reminder that real brilliance lies in connecting the dots.
Yeah, I like that.
Da Vinci wasn't just a painter or an engineer or a scientist.
He was all of them.
Yeah, he was all of those things because he saw the connection that other people missed.
Like he was playing a cosmic game of connect the dots.
He was. And the picture he revealed was just breathtaking.
And it makes you wonder, what connections are we missing in our own lives?
Ooh, that's a good question.
What could we achieve if we could see those connections?
Right, if we could think outside the box a little more.
And step outside of our comfort zone.
Look beyond those boundaries we've created for ourselves.
Exactly. Maybe there's a little Da Vinci inside all of us just waiting to be unleashed.
Maybe there is. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the life and mind of Leonardo da Vinci, what's one key takeaway you hope our listeners will remember?
I hope they'll be inspired to cultivate their own sense of curiosity, to embrace the interconnectedness of knowledge.
Yeah.
And to approach the world with this constant sense of wonder.
I love that. That's beautifully said.
Thanks.
And I think it really captures the essence of Da Vinci's legacy.
I think so too.
It's not just about the masterpieces he created.
I know.
It's about the potential that exists within each of us when we dare to ask questions and challenge assumptions.
To look at the world with fresh eyes.
Exactly. So thank you for joining me on this journey into the mind of a true Renaissance man.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners, we hope you're feeling inspired to unlock your own inner Leonardo.
Yeah, go out there and explore.
Embrace that relentless curiosity and see where it leads you. Until next time, keep exploring.